What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Gridiron Uncensored podcast. We're joined by a special guest tonight as well from College Football Talk Daily, buddy John. He's joining us, so we obviously appreciate you coming on. And we're going to talk more of the Big Ten season previews. We're rolling through it. We've got Rutgers tonight. We've got Oregon, Penn State, and Purdue. So we're just going to go ahead and jump right in it, and we're going to talk some Rutgers football first with our buddy John here. So obviously 2023 wasn't exactly, the way they wanted it to play out with such a strong defense. Really the back end of the schedule got heavy with Ohio State, Iowa, Penn State, and then Maryland, but they capped it off with a really nice bowl win against Miami. I was excited about that one. I know Trevor and I have mentioned it on, Twitter and other platforms that I like what Rutgers is building. And I think even getting rid of Wims, it's a good thing. Others might disagree, but I don't see how you can necessarily. Graciano has been doing a great job, I think, at building something, especially defensively. John, I'm curious to see what you think about Schiano in his second time back at Rutgers and, what he's doing for the program.
All right, yeah. So I'll be honest, I did not watch Rutgers much. So I got into football probably 2010, 2011. So not around for, I don't think, any of the Schiano first era. So when they brought him back, it wasn't as nostalgic for me as other Rutgers fans. I was a little skeptical because his time with the Bucks wasn't the best, and I didn't live through like the glory years like other Rutgers fans.
Sure.
So I thought maybe there was better options. So he kind of had to prove it to me. So far, it's been pretty well though. He was starting with really nothing, right? I mean, we were awful. I mean, you guys are Michigan fans. You probably vividly remember the 78-0 game. I'm sure not as much as I remember that game. But, yeah, so we've came a long way from that. So that's pretty good. So far I like what he's doing. We have an identity now. I think that's the biggest thing. We have like strong defense, run game. We're going to be tough to play, and we're not going to score 40 points a game, but we can try to grind one out here and there.
Yeah, Trevor.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what Greg's doing, Mr. Schiano. You're right. His time in the NFL was not something that anyone would scream about. But he's a college coach. At the end of the day, he is a college coach. He pretty much every time he came back to college that he had a successful stint. I like what he's doing in the transfer portal. More importantly, though, I really like what he's doing in the recruiting realm. Where, I mean, I just like some of these kids that he's got. I mean, granted, I grant you, it is only the 55th ranked class. I get it, but some of these kids, I mean, like shoot, the kid from. Kid out of Georgia, 28th best in the state, 18th best wide receiver in the country. He's a top 300 player, 6'2 and a half, 170 pounds. Like that's a great wide receiver to start out with. Just coming into this year. I just like a lot of these kids. The young kid AJ Suris out of Notre Dame in New Jersey, 6'1 and a half quarterback. 29th best quarterback in the country. I mean, that isn't anything to really, sniff at. But I mean, like, I'll tell you what, like some of the kids that he's got coming in, you can tell where his focus was this offseason. It was not necessarily transfer portal, but I think more so it has definitely been the recruiting trail of high school athletes.
Yeah. If I could just chime in, Suris too, he's actually like, really hyped up here, at least in New Jersey. His dad, I think, is the offensive coordinator or head coach at Princeton University. So he's been around like football like his entire life, really.
Yeah, and that's something you want too. Is somebody that's the football knowledge, the ability that's somebody that's been around the game. They know what's going on. Ratings obviously are huge in recruiting. People say stars don't matter. They do, but you can also find guys that are really good and are fitting your culture. And I think a lot of teams still go out and they try to recruit too much just based on stars instead of going off of culture and, who fits your style of play. And I see that Schiano's doing that. Like Trevor's mentioned, he's got some good guys coming up. And, it's exciting, I think, for what they're building. And, we talked about the portal very briefly. The biggest thing that came out of the portal was the transfer of Wimsett and getting in Kaliak Manis from Minnesota. When you look at it, Damir Miller coming up as a wide receiver, he's rated as a 4-star transfer on 24/7. And then you get a plug and play guy from Malcolm Ray coming in from Florida State on the D line. So those are things that are just going to help you out when you've already got a strong defense. You're looking for guys that not just are starters but rotational pieces. And I think he's done a solid job of that this year. I know ratings wise, it's not the great, like it's 101st rated transfer class, but again, that doesn't always matter when you already have 72% returning production. You don't need a huge transfer class.
Yeah, I think Damir Miller is going to be a standout for Rutgers this year. I mean, last year we had a deep threat receiver, but not really a true number one. Miller broke a ton of school records at Monmouth, and Monmouth is pretty close to Rutgers, so that's going to be a seamless transition for him. The staff probably got to see him in person a few times. I think the biggest thing, though, is not getting rid of, but Wimsett leaving to go to Kentucky and getting, as we call him, the Greek rifle, even though some may say he's not worthy of that name yet.
I love it.
I don't know, but I think you should coin that immediately.
Yeah, we've already coined it. It's already.
I love it.
Yeah, just having that like a pro-style quarterback, I think it's going to be worth the trade-off of, because Wimsett last year, I mean, he missed on a lot of throws that really hurt the offense. Yeah. And as you guys know, some of them are drive killers. If it's a guy wide open and then everyone's heads down, doesn't want to, play 100% anymore.
Yep.
No, you're absolutely right. And that's the thing with Wimsett was, yeah, he was talented in aspects, but his completion percentage, I think, was one of the worst in the league. It was just really bad. And when you get a good running back in Monangai, and everybody's focused on that, there's no passing threat, you're killing your team. And like I said, you had the 16th overall defense last year. So you hate seeing that, I don't want to say wasted, because you still bowl win, 7 wins. But it's just one of those, like, man, what else could have been? You lost against Wisconsin, tight game against that was kind of early on, Maryland, I think it was. And then, others, obviously Ohio State's tough, Michigan's tough, but those games are still competitive, hard hitting. You get a quarterback that can stretch the defense a little bit more, you're going to see that run game open up. And I think that's what's going to happen this year with Kaliak Manis back there. It just seems like, I know it's maybe not, maybe people outside the program might think, it's not a huge deal. I think it's a big transfer for them.
Yeah, especially because, like you were just saying, I think that Ohio State game was maybe 17-14 at halftime. So it was pretty close. And there was one play in the second quarter where Wimsett overthrew Patterson by like 15 yards, and he was wide open for like a 60-yard touchdown. Like it was so bad. Like he burned the DB, fell down, I think, and he completely missed him. And that's killer. Like, because if you go into halftime up, 27-14 on Ohio State or 24-14, you have a good defense. It could have happened.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've never rooted for Rutgers more, like coming into a game, and the way they were playing in that first half, I was just like, "Oh my gosh, this is happening!"
Yeah, wow. That's happened a few times with them last season. Yeah. There's so much potential there, and that's why we like this team. Again, they bring back 72% production, and I think they're gonna have a strong defense again this year. We talked about the running back game is going to be strong.
Yep.
Really, I'm just curious about the tight end room, because Langen's gone. I think he was a big piece, so I'm curious about that room. And then I guess receiver. But if you're bringing in,
it will be,
like we talked about Miller, then that at least helps.
Yep, they got Miller. Then the kid I was mentioning just a few minutes ago about their top recruit in the 2024, Antonio White. He's looks like he could be a really good receiver potentially. They did pick up a few athletes and a very small tight end. So he's like Corey Duff. He's the best, according to 247 Sports. He's the best player in New York and the 28th best tight end. Not rated as far as nationally, not as far as the top 300 goes, looks like, but 6'5", 207. I mean, like, depending on how they use him and what kind of offense they end up kind of to flex it a little bit. I mean, they could make him a mismatch nightmare depending on how fast he is and everything like that.
Yeah, so Duff, he's kind of like a freak athlete. I think the plan is for him, year one at least, to play a little bit of receiver on the outside, and then as he puts on weight, maybe eventually transition into a tight end.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good plan. So as of right now, are you guys seeing that Brendan, say his name because I'm going to brutalize it. Say his name. Yeah, that's it.
Or the Greek.
So as
rifle,
of right now,
right?
he's QB1, right? I mean, there's really no one pressing him as far as outside of that, right?
Yeah. So we have Suris and we have a Johnny Shepard too, who's also like a dual threat. He might see some playing time, kind of not much, but kind of sort of how Michigan used what was that guy last year?
Orgy.
Yeah, Orgy, kind of like that. He's kind of like a dual threat. So maybe in short yardage, like him and one guy in the backfield. But other than that, like it's pretty much the Greek Rifles room.
I got you.
God, I love that phrase, man.
I love it, dude.
Oh, I love that.
I love
so
it.
The last phrase didn't work out for me. So when we got what was his name, Gavin Wimsatt, I was calling him basically Lamar Jackson, and that might have been a stretch.
Oh no.
you might have jinxed him on that one.
Yeah, it might have been a stretch.
Oh my goodness. Well, I love the Greek rifle. And like I said, I look at the offense. I'm not really too concerned about it. I'm just a question about the offensive line too. How are they going to gel? Because they did lose some players in the portal, but nothing really stands out to me. It really defensively, you lost more on the D line, but offensive line, I just want, they had some injuries, I think, last year. How are they going to gel this season? They should all be back and be ready to roll. So really, to me, it hinges on the offensive line. Are they squared away? Are they ready? And Monangai, he just has to keep going from what he had last year. And it's going to be a solid offense compared to obviously last season.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, you go first.
No, I was just going to say, I was like, I think so. I think that's a completely accurate statement. And for just to kind of add on to that, it's just really, if you just look at the schedule that they have coming up, it's very doable. It's a very doable schedule if they get all those pieces clicking. But yeah, the offensive line will be the biggest. The line in general on both sides of the ball is something that I'll be keeping an eye on, almost on all these no insults intended, but the mid-tier Big Ten teams. The front lines on both sides of the ball is going to be the super important this year with all these new teams coming in.
Yeah. So I know Rutgers has one standout on the offensive line. The rest of it's kind of iffy, but I don't know if you guys know Holland Pierce. I think he's the left tackle for Rutgers. He's like, I just saw on PFF, he was like a top 3 lineman in the Big Ten, I think, for the offensive line. He's huge. He's like 6'9", 300 something. He's a massive human being.
That's a big guy. That is a big guy. And I mean, they're gonna need him because I mean, some of these teams that they're gonna run up against, they may not be great, but they will have some edge rushers, and he will be needed greatly, especially third game of the season when they go into Blacksburg and play Virginia Tech. That would be really their first test. I like how their schedule kind of plays out, where it's what the hell is that team's name? I just left it. It just left my brain. Howard. How it goes Howard, then Akron. So it's kind of a tier thing. Howard, Akron, Virginia Tech, and then they get into the Big Ten play with Washington as their first game Washington coming into Piscataway.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a Friday night game out. It's gonna be a blackout for Washington, so that'll be pretty fun.
That will be fun.
I already have my tickets to that, so that'll be good. Virginia, like you said, though, it builds up in tiers, kind of Howard, Akron, and then ease into Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, the bye week going into Virginia Tech is huge. Obviously it's in Blacksburg, but just those first 2 games, just getting those the gears moving, the cogs turning, feeling out your team. You can make any last minute adjustments you need, like you said, and then you get into the meat of the schedule. And like you mentioned, Trevor, it is winnable. I mean, Virginia Tech is, they're an up and coming team. I think a lot of people are expecting them to have a big year. Washington, they've changed a lot. We talked about them.
We don't really even know what kind of Washington team we're going to get.
I know. We talked about them on one of our episodes recently, and it's just kind of like they've got pieces, but it's still that's a very winnable game. Friday night, like you said, blackout. Oh, that's big time TV. I'm gonna watch that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then Nebraska's revamped. Wisconsin's got some things going for them. UCLA's new coach, USC new defense. That's a tough little stretch, but you could win all those dang games. And when I look at it, I could see Rutgers going and beating them all. Mm-hmm. It would not shock me, is what I'm getting at. Now, is it going to happen? Not necessarily. Things happen in football. It's crazy stuff. But I see that as a winnable stretch that they could make it through.
So I think the biggest thing about this Rutgers schedule that stands out to me is who we don't play, actually.
Yes.
Because as you know, normally looking at the Rutgers schedule, you see November is normally Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State in some sort of order. And that's normally 3 straight losses right off the board. So not having those 3 built-in losses, as we normally call them here at Rutgers, is very, very nice.
Yeah. I mean, shoot, you guys don't get Michigan, you don't get Ohio State, you don't get Penn State, and now you don't get Oregon. Yeah. I'd say that's a win in of itself.
No Iowa either.
What's that? Iowa. Oh yeah. Well, whatever.
Look, they've got a great defense, but offensively, I feel you.
We're kind of like Iowa light. That's what we're becoming at the moment. So
yeah, exactly right.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, I mean, hey Brendan, what's the over under that they have for Rutgers for the season right now?
Yeah, I'm tracking 6.5 from early. I'm not sure if it's shifted.
That's all day long, I think. With this schedule, I think that they can get 7-8 wins. I don't know, John. What do you think? What would you say the Rutgers fandom would say is a successful season with this schedule and everything leading up to the season?
So we actually just had this conversation the other day, me and a few of my friends. So I think last year with a much tougher schedule, winning 7 games, if anything under 7 this year, I feel like would kind of be disappointing because last year, even with the gauntlet of schedule, we still managed to 6 wins, get the bowl game win. So I feel like anything under, like 6, if we win 6 games, I feel like that's a bad year because this is as good of a schedule as it's going to be for a very long time. The team said returns a lot of production, so you have to shoot for 7 or 8 wins. I think at least 7 wins.
Right. Yeah, I think honestly, I think 8 wins is certainly doable, and especially if you can pull off a win. Say, for example, when you go out to Los Angeles against USC, if you win that game and you still are having momentum, I mean, the sky's the limit for the team if they can kind of run through their schedule. Hopefully they don't have any hiccups, but I mean, we'll see. But Wisconsin's a team that I think a lot of people are sleeping on at this point. So that's probably one question mark in this whole schedule is how does Wisconsin play every game this season? But really, that would be my biggest worry is because Wisconsin usually always reloads, and that's probably my only real concern with because USC. I don't know what I'm going to get with USC from year to year or game to game at this point. So.
Yeah, for USC, it all depends on that defense and how that's revamped. Wisconsin, like you said, they've got pieces, but
they got a young quarterback too, so you don't know how he'll react. I mean, they will be at home, so there's that. But put a little pressure in a kid's face, you never know how they're going to react.
Especially with a strong Big Ten defense like what Rutgers has,
Mm-hmm.
So now I look at the Virginia Tech game as one where obviously that's week 3, huge matchup. Like you said, everybody's expecting a lot from Virginia Tech. We're expecting some good things out of Rutgers this year. That's a huge matchup in my mind. I want to see how that one plays out. And if they beat them like they did last year, then okay. I'm putting a lot more stock into this Rutgers team. I guess, John, do you have anything that like you're circling on the schedule that you're like absolute must-win game? You cannot obviously like USC is a must-win game. But anything else that stands out to you?
So honestly, I was going to say the month of October is like the defining stretch of the season. After that Washington game, you get Nebraska, Wisconsin, UCLA, USC. I feel like that's going to, you can't go any worse than 2-2 in there, I think, or the season might get derailed. If you're looking at like 3-5 going into Minnesota in November, that's probably not going to be ideal.
Sure.
But I would say you said must win, right?
Yeah. Like just a big game that you start like this game is even like Maryland. Like that's a game that's always funky. Maryland's always a funky team.
Yeah, I'll give you mine.
Yeah.
And I think it's early on in the season. Personally, I think it's that Washington game. Friday night, underneath the lights, set the tone for the whole rest of the Big Ten schedule by that one game. I think the first Big Ten opener, Friday night, underneath the lights, is a must win for Rutgers to set the tone for the rest of the Big Ten schedule. That's just my opinion on where I think that they need to go in hard on Washington and come out with that W that night.
So, all right, I think that's a good one, but I think it's a little too early in the season to call must win. But I see the point of setting the tone. So that's a good one. I'd probably say October 19th versus UCLA. I mean, you got Deshaun Foster. I think he's going to be a great coach, but Chip Kelly left kind of the cupboard a little barren. So I feel like that's a team that's on par with our talent level. So we have to at least play them close.
Yeah.
If we lose that game, I feel like it could be kind of demoralizing.
Sure.
Yeah, I can see that for sure.
Definitely, especially like you said before, a big game, and going back to going out west, to Los Angeles. So yeah, the travel in between too. I agree with you. I think that's tough. So for me, this Rutgers season comes down to obviously the offensive line, and then the Greek rifle. How he transitions from into this year with a new team, new supporting cast. I'm really interested to see how this Rutgers team plays out. But I like what's going on there. I know Trevor does. And obviously John does too.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think we're going to roll on. John, I appreciate your time and joining us. It means a lot to us to have you come on.
Absolutely.
You built an awesome platform on Twitter throughout the years, and it's really honored to have you come on.
Yeah, no, thank you guys for having me. I appreciate you. I'll be sure to promote your show when it comes out. But you guys said you're doing Oregon next.
Yeah, and you're more than welcome to stay on.
You want to stick around?
I don't know if you can see, but I.
Oh, look at that!
Hold up!
Stick around, my friend.
Oh.
Stick around.
Oh, we got a Frago coming, boys and girls.
I'm an Oregon fan, so
let's send it. All right, so
let's go,
John
bro.
Let's
go, my man.
We got Oregon next. Let's hit it. Obviously,
let's go right into it then.
Things didn't go the way that they wanted it to in 2023 either. They had all this promise. They were, they were the betting odds favorite to win against Washington, I think both times, and they lost both times to Washington. Still a great season, a consolation prize, if you want to call it, in the Fiesta Bowl, beating Liberty. So that's a huge win, and Dan Lanning's getting things rolling. Obviously in the portal too. I mean, this guy's working it. So Oregon's got everything going for them, just like we talked about Ohio State. This is a team that is immediately playoff contender. You say it, you see it. They should be wanting and being in the national title contention and talk from day one until really the end of the season. Probably one of the Big Ten favorites. So, guys, what do you think about Oregon coming into this 2024 season? You lose Bo Nix, you go get Dylan Gabriel.
I mean, you can't really go wrong with that. I mean, if you were talking about a perfect replacement to run that Oregon offense, you would think Dylan Gabriel out of all the quarterbacks that were probably playing that were coming back the year next. But then on top of that, to get Dante Moore as the heir apparent to Dylan Gabriel, I'm just like, well, okay.
Yeah.
Somebody raided the cookie jar and got all the cookies. But like, good Lord. And then you look at their recruiting class, the fourth best recruiting class, the second best transfer portal class. Like, okay, so in my mind, if they don't make it to the national semifinal, it is a complete and utter wash at this point. They should be, in my opinion, in some ways, they are more of a favorite than Ohio State to me because of everything they're bringing in and everything that they were already building at last season, where, I mean, yes, they had a few little hiccups, but honestly, they were rocking and rolling up until that Pac-12 championship game.
Yeah.
They had and so, like, I don't know, the way I look at them right now, they are, any loss I feel like they're going to feel it because they are so heavily favored in probably majority of their games. Outside of Ohio State, because that's going to be a bomb game to go to watch in Eugene.
Yeah.
But then they got Ohio State, they have Michigan, but that is it, folks. Like, honestly, if you look at their schedule, what else do you see a problem with other than Ohio State, Michigan? Maybe Washington, depending on how they go.
I see one trap game for Oregon that kind of worries me as an Oregon fan, because, as you know, Oregon pretty much always like a top 10 program lately, but they always seem to not be able to get out of their own way. Yeah. I think the week 2 game versus Boise State is going to be huge, because that is the classic, like, this game's at 10 p.m. No one's going to watch it. We're going to wake up and Oregon lost by a field goal. Like, yeah,
you're not wrong.
And then, well, I mean, Boise's one of those teams that I kind of have pegged as a kind of a team that could come out of the be one of the teams that takes that spot for the lower level, or the group of 5 teams.
Mm-hmm. They have a star running back, Ashton Jeanty. I think he's incredible. He could kind of, because the thing with Oregon is the defensive line is just, they're kind of like Dan Lanning's trying to build the Georgia North for them. And you got to have a strong run game to wear out those defensive linemen, or it's going to be a long day for you. And Boise can kind of do that. So,
yeah, but Boise's one that's always have been able to upset teams when they're least expecting it. And like you said, the time on that, it's like the old school Pac-12 after dark. RIP to that, by the way. Now you got Big Ten after dark. So we'll take it. We'll try to do the best so we can in the Big Ten. But no, that's a game that you got to watch out for. They're going to be one of the best teams in the group of 5. We covered that a little while back. For those of you that are listening, if you want to go check out the group of 5, episode on our YouTube. But yeah, I look at it again. I agree with you, Trevor. It's Ohio State. It's Michigan. I agree with the Boise State. But obviously you got, rival game in Washington at the end. Wisconsin. Right. Is I'd say a sneaky one.
That might be a sneaky one as well. In between, you play Michigan, then you come back. You got Maryland, who might not actually be an easy game. Maryland might be a tough one. Maybe not for Oregon, but they're more slightly improved team. But then you got to go out to Madison and play Wisconsin, and then that might be a trap game. Looking ahead to Washington, depending on how Washington's doing, we'll see how that goes. But more to speaking to John's point about the defense, I like that point, but I also like the fact that they got a 5-star in Elijah Rushing, an edge rusher, 6'6", 251, third best player in the country. Like that kid. I mean, depending on how he develops this offseason, that could be someone that could make an instant impact. I mean, you figure 5-star. When they're 5-star rated, you expect them to make an impact. Maybe not year 1 necessarily, but by their sophomore year, they'll be making an impact usually.
Yeah, I feel like for a 5-star, like who's like at least top 5-star, I feel like you at least want contributions early. It's not like a major impact.
Rotational player.
Like I said, Oregon rotates a lot, so I feel like at least on third downs, kind of like when they had Kayvon Thibodeau his first year, he kind of just rotated in on third downs, and because he wasn't the best at run defense his first year, but you can learn that after. Yeah, anyone can go chase the quarterback around, and when you're a 5-star recruit, you seem to be pretty good at it.
Yeah, and I mean they've got 5 players in the top 100 players in the country, so that's phenomenal.
Yeah, I'll say the blessing with them is they're already so deep that you don't really have to worry about a freshman coming in and trying to, be this big name, big brand guy. Like you said, rotational is what you want with these types of teams. You saw with Michigan defense last year, a lot of rotating, and that's what you need to keep guys fresh, especially on defense when you go through the meat of the Big Ten schedule. And you look at the portal and what they did. I mean, they brought in 14. They did lose 20. And they lost some talent, but I mean, they've got the second-ranked portal class, like you mentioned, Trevor. You bring in Evan Stewart, Cam Alexander, cornerback help from UTSA, Jabbar Muhammad, who was wonderful for Washington last year. More D-line help. I mean, you're loaded. This team is loaded. it's just I don't see it. I don't see them really stumbling this season. Again, Dylan Gabriel is going to be special on offense. With last year, he, over 3,600 yards, 30-6 touchdown ratio, and he had 12 rushing touchdowns. So I mean, the dude's dangerous. It's going to be interesting to see how this offense plays. But you look at the schedule. They have everything in front of them. At least, even if they lose to Michigan and Ohio State, they're still probably making the dang playoff. It's with the 12 team, you get a lot of leeway.
They do. I mean, I was listening to, I was talking to a few people, friends of mine, and they were talking about the football playoff, and they did bring up a good point, is that these teams that are going through these gauntlets of the Big Ten and the SEC, it is more imperative than ever that they get that first round bye because of the amount of damage that the starters will have over the course of a season within the Big Ten and the SEC. So it's a strategic thing, I think, for me with Oregon especially, because you'll have a lot of talent and you are what seems to be pretty deep team. But now you have to develop that rotation throughout the season. So there's very little fall off from the starting line to the backup, so that when those playoff games come around, you can handle maybe doing a play-in, or not the play-in game, but the first round game instead of in case you don't get to the Big Ten championship, which I do think they will.
Yeah.
But it's a very big thing, especially this year, because it's going to be very interesting to see how teams manage their rosters and manage those late in the season games. If they're already mathematically into the Big Ten championship game, do they rest their starters? Because if they're mathematically already in the Big Ten championship game, is there really a reason to play your starters?
It's a great point.
I'll say, go ahead, John.
No, I just think it's a great point because, sure, it looks bad if you rest your starters before Washington, but if you're already mathematically in the playoffs, you kind of have bigger fish to fry at that point, and why waste, like you said, is it worth it the wear and tear to beat Washington when you have, Alabama or someone coming up week 1 maybe?
Yeah.
Or even having to play Michigan or Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. Right, that whatever, how many, what is it, 2 weeks after the last game that they play?
Yeah.
They'll play the Big Ten championship game, I think.
I think it's a week. November 30th is the last game, and then December 7th is,
Yeah, so that would be that following week, yeah. So, it wouldn't be – I wouldn't hate on them for it.
I don't know
how – they were in it.
I don't know how many people will actually do that just because – and I'm sure some will, like some of your main guys, but like you said, seeding is going to be everything. So even if you were to rest and you end up screwing yourself over and losing to Washington before the Big Ten championship game, then, it just, you could get knocked back on your seeding. Who knows what's going to happen? That's why I'm really curious to see how this 12 team plays this year. But I know Washington or Oregon's going to be right in the mix with that. I mean, if they're not, it's a catastrophe of a season for them.
So I mean, excuse me. But Dan Lanning, I'm thinking to myself, like, he's got so much equity. Like, the fans love him. He's got this great recruiting class and all that stuff. But how fickle are fans, and how quickly can you be on the hot seat if you have this kind of a recruiting class, this kind of talent, and don't produce? It's kind of they'll start looking at Dan Lanning as not necessarily one of the best coaches in the country. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think just going back to your last point about the resting guys, I just think it just depends kind of how you were saying, how the schedule plays out. Like, I think having Washington the last week of the year is kind of tough for Oregon. If they had someone like Illinois or like Maryland, maybe I think you could get a lot more rest in.
Yeah. Well, now that you mention it, it does really factor in on how the schedule plays out, because November 2nd, they're playing Michigan at Michigan. And if for whatever reason they happen to lose that game, it would be probably more important than ever that they win their season outright, the rest of those games. Absolutely. If they were to happen to lose that game.
Yeah, I'd say it's all situational based, how the season plays out to that
100%.
point. But again, this team is loaded. Defense, offense, the receiver core is good. It's going to be a dangerous team. And obviously, everybody's got circled Ohio State in Autzen Stadium on October 12th. Huge matchup. And then after that, I mean, who knows if Michigan could totally fall off offensively with quarterback play. So if it's just Ohio State, depending on Michigan and how they do, I mean, they could cakewalk right in just because of how talented this team really is. But that's just my opinion on it. Guys, you got anything else on Oregon? I feel like there's not much to say. They're just loaded.
Yeah, they really are.
It's just a team.
It's a loaded roster for real.
You look at the schedule and
this might be the most talented roster between the transfer portal, the recruiting class that they brought in, plus the returning people that they've got. I mean, this might be the most talented roster in all of football right now.
Yeah.
What do you think, John?
Yeah, I think it's definitely up there. I mean, the Big Ten. So I'm pretty high on the Big Ten. So I value a lot of Ohio State and Michigan's roster. Michigan, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
Sure.
But I think Oregon's very well rounded, especially the offensive line. I mean, they're massive everywhere. Like I said, they're kind of the defensive line too. They're a little weak, I think, at running back a little bit. I think personally, but and I think the Big Ten is a conference where you have to run the ball. But we'll see. They're going to bring a new style that the Big Ten really only sees from Ohio State, kind of. So it'll be interesting to see if it works for them.
Yeah, for sure.
I know we mentioned last year, and I think others did too. But when you looked at Oregon last season in the Pac-12, they were the most built like a Big Ten team. I think outside of Arizona, when you look at like how the teams actually played, and Arizona was one of those. They pound you, but they had talented quarterback in Fafita. It was the same with Oregon. Bo Nix, he was able to dink and dunk you. They had strong running back play, really strong offensive line. So you carry that in, and that's why I think they're set up so nicely into the season. Obviously, the schedule helps them out too. But man, guys, let us know, what do you think about Oregon? Are they more talented than Ohio State? Ohio State's a loaded roster, and really, when we've covered the ACC already, Clemson, Florida State, they're low talented teams. But when you talk about Oregon and Ohio State, I still feel like they're a tier ahead of everybody else.
Yep. I would say that they are a tier above really anybody else. I mean, even if I was to take both the Big Ten and SEC, I still would take Ohio State and Oregon over the talent of even Georgia and Alabama, personally. Yeah. That's the way I view them right now. Is I just think those two teams are on a level that are different than everybody else. Don't get me wrong. Georgia, head-to-head Georgia, it's a 50-50 toss-up because Kirby Smart's a phenomenal coach. And he gets his guys to play every time. And they've got a talented roster. I just think what Oregon and Ohio State have built this season rivals and potentially is more talented than anybody in the SEC right now.
I completely agree.
Yeah, I feel you on that. I think Texas is close. Georgia, obviously, very strong as well. But guys, anything else on Oregon? Otherwise, I reckon we'll move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
I do have to hop off here, unfortunately. But
no,
John.
Well, hey, man, I appreciate you being on again, of course, and hopefully we get to have you on again down the line.
I would love to come back on. Thank you guys for having me, and I wish you guys the best.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, take it easy, bud.
We'll see you.
You too.
Later.
All right, guys. So those listening on podcast, you didn't get to see our buddy John was on here again from College Football Talk Daily. He's built a really strong account on Twitter, so we really appreciate him coming over. We've talked about Oregon. We've talked about Rutgers. We're going to jump into Penn State, and this is a team that I feel like is just consistently underwhelmed. And I'm not even trying to be disrespectful, but it's just, for me, obviously, outside looking in, I see a lot of talent, and it just doesn't click. It doesn't finish with the biggest games on the schedule. And Michigan had this problem for a while too, until certain things changed around, new coordinators, and then they were able to get over that hump. So I'm curious to see if Penn State can do that in 2024. Now, they return 67% of their roster. They have an over-under of 9.5. I didn't mention, I guess, Oregon's. There was a 10.5 over under. That should hit. Either way, back to Penn State, 9.5 over under. You had a top 2 defense last year, but a 53rd ranked offense. That doesn't necessarily mean too much, but when you look at the quarterback play in the biggest games and you look at maybe the game-making decisions in those big plays, I think that's where you were left hurting, because Alar, he was very, very safe bet. He made good passes at times. He kept the football out of the opponent's hands. That's the biggest thing. But I feel like he also wouldn't go out and win you a football game. It didn't happen against Ohio State. It didn't happen against Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I want to see. Can he make that jump with a new offensive coordinator? And then obviously they got a new D coordinator too, Trevor. You got more on.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, they've got a couple of them. They got let's see. Well, let's just start off with the most obvious one, and that's Mr. Tom Allen, revitalizing his coaching career as a D coordinator at Penn State, coming over from, obviously he got fired from the Indiana job. He was the former head coach there. We got Andy Kotalik, whatever. Andy Kotalinicki. I should have practiced this before we started.
No, dude, don't. I know if Penn State fans
Kotalinicki.
will be upset.
I'm sure that's not how you say it. But anyway,
we're sorry.
Yeah, he comes over, and actually, if I was a Nittany Lion fan, which I am not, but if I was, I would be actually excited about them getting this hire.
Mm-hmm.
Mainly because he just spent the last 3 seasons as the Kansas Jayhawks offensive coordinator. And I don't know, most of you may not follow Kansas as much as we do. However, they have had a very prolific offense the past few years. They have done very well. They moved the ball well. Last year, their offense was explosive, ranking 12th in the country in 20 plus yards per play, 15th in 30 yards per play, and 11th in 40 yard plays. Additionally, they ranked 10th in the country in 15 yards pass plays, which is about 20% over the last 3 years. That is way more than I could say for the Nittany Lion offense. And I'll tell you this much is that I think they should be very happy they got him. I think he's going to increase their production quite a bit. The Kansas offense was very efficient in the red zone and on third down over the last 3 seasons. They ranked 11th in red zone touchdowns at 68.2% and 16th in third down conversions at basically 45%.
Yeah,
which is also very good. 2 things you definitely need to be able to do in the Big Ten is convert on third downs and convert while you're in the red zone.
Yeah, that's for me. It's obviously Alar and how he gels with the new coordinator. I feel like you said, I think that's a really good hire that they made. I'm excited to see what he does with it, because obviously your defense is strong, and they went out and got some help from AJ Harris, Kimber. Guys coming up from the SEC just to bolster that defense even more. You lose some edge production on defense, but I think you've got some good talent in there. But when you talk about this team, it's offense. Can they produce? Can they go out and beat the biggest games on their schedule? And it all starts with Alar. He's going to be safe. He's going to be secure with the football. We know this. He's a proven commodity in that aspect. I want to see him stretch the field. I want to see him hit some targets. Biggest concern for me, though, is the wide receiver room. They lost a lot of talent. You lose Lambert Smith, Theo Johnson at tight end. But I want to know, who are they going to lean on offensively? Now, I know they got Julian Fleming from Ohio State. He wants to be the number 1 guy. He is. I think he's the only guy. I don't know, Trevor. That's my deepest concern for this Penn State team. Not even Alar, and because I think people give him an unfair shake. I like Alar to a point. I do agree that he's not gonna go out and win you games, but you can certainly win a game with him. But But when you talk about wide receivers, you got to have targets. You got to hit them. And I'm worried about the depth because they didn't go out and get anybody outside of Fleming. And you lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wide receivers on your depth chart in the transfer portal. And that's tough. So I don't know. I'm curious to see what happens there. They're 58th overall portal class. So again, it's at mid-range, not bad, not great, but they got pieces that they need. Nolan Rusi coming over from Wisconsin helps on the O-line because you lost a couple of pieces there. But really, to me, it's again that wide receiver room, and I guess defensive coordinator too. Who'd they bring in on D coordinator after you losing Manny Diaz down to Duke, man?
Yeah, I don't know. I'll tell you what, man. Like, I like their transfer portal class, hands down, is not, but they did have the 14th ranked recruiting class, and the top notch player that they got was Luke Reynolds, 6'4" tight end, 5-star player, top 30 player in the nation. Best in the state of Connecticut, which isn't hard to do because Connecticut's like this big. And but he is the best tight end in the country as well. He's rated as the best tight end in the country. So he more than likely, like we said previously, with him being a 5-star, I expect him to contribute in some way this year. Maybe not right away, but I would imagine that he will at least get garbage time. And if he performs and actually does good fundamentals, I would venture to guess that he will be a part of the offense more and more and more. That's just the way I kind of look at 5 stars, in my opinion. If you are rated the top 30 player in the nation, the best tight end in the country, I almost expect you to at least start maybe behind the veteran tight end that might already be there. But you're going to more than likely be the number 2 tight end.
Yeah,
is the way I look at this. So he could be a weapon. They have the second best inside offensive lineman in the country committed to them. That's Cooper Cousins out of Pennsylvania. Second best player in the state of Pennsylvania, which is actually saying a lot because Pennsylvania pumps out really good football players.
They do.
But he's nationally 53rd best player in the country. 6'6", 323 pounds, Brendan. The guy is a man-child.
That's a big dude right there, man.
That is a man-child, dude. I don't even know what to say about that.
That's one thing James Franklin has always done is, I think, recruited O-line well and running backs. And so he's got a few really good play. Like, they have a really good class. I like their class. Looking over it, reviewing it, they have 7 top 200 players in there, and 3 of which are offensive linemen. So we have, let's see, the two other offensive linemen, they're both 4 stars. They're both top 200 players. They're the best in their states, respectively. One out of Wisconsin is the best in his state. Then Liam Andrews out of Massachusetts is the second best in his state. But they're both smaller. They both need to pack on the pounds a little bit. 165, 260. The other one's 6'7", 265. The 6'7" and 6'5", if they fill out a little bit, they'll be more than likely rotational pieces at the beginning, at least. Yeah. It just, again, some of these guys change so much when they get right into a college program, especially if they're early enrollees too.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So much. So now I'm interested to see how this team shakes out defensively. I think, again, they're going to be great. They brought down Abdul Carter from linebacker, which, that helps out with losing Chop Robinson.
Mm-hmm.
He's been around for a minute. So that shores up that there. And really, it's just, how's Tom Allen going to get this team rolling on defense? Can he sustain what's already been there? Let's go and look at the schedule, Trevor.
Let's take a peek at what the cakewalk Penn State schedule looks like.
Because really, like you said, I mean, this is they have not made the playoff in a 14 playoff. They've been right there, right in the Big Ten mix, but they just can't get over the hump.
Literally, USC, Wisconsin, and Ohio State, and you're in. Like, seriously.
And honestly, you got West Virginia early. Virginia, I think, is going to be a better team this year than they were last season. But then Bowling Green, bye week, Kent State, Illinois, UCLA, all teams that are, you should beat them with the talent that you have.
100%.
And then, like you said, it's a 3-game stretch.
Yep.
USC, Wisconsin, Ohio State.
2 away games and a home game.
Win 2 of those.
Yep.
And you're going to be in the playoff.
I would imagine if I was a betting man, because they doesn't appear to have a time on it yet, but I'll put money on it that if they can do it, they're going to make the Ohio State Penn State game a night game in Beaver Stadium. If they can do it, they're going to do it.
That's got to be the night game. That's got to be the whiteout. I know it's November 2nd. Big Ten's always had some things about doing night games in November or whatever, but I think that's a prime time game right there. Unless Fox does the Big Ten big noon kickoff, and they can still do a whiteout, but it just hits different at night. So I'm curious to see what they do with that, Trevor. That's a good point.
They need to do like Fox underneath the lights or something like that. Do a separate program from some of these major games underneath the lights.
Yeah. I don't mind big noon kickoff, but some of these, it's just like, okay, that's for sure needs to be a night game, prime time, dark, it's dark out, the lights are on, the crowd's crazy, everybody's trash, most likely. I mean, I don't know. I've never done it. I'm just saying.
I've never done it my ass.
Oh, hey, don't come at me like that. But either way, let's get back to the schedule talk. Ohio State, like, again, you beat 2 out of the 3. You beat USC, Wisconsin. Even if you lose to Ohio State, you got smooth sailing, in my opinion. And Trevor, I believe you believe that too. Hell, you could be playing for a Big Ten championship if you only lose 1 game. It just depends. There's a lot of tiebreakers. Our friend Jake from the Walk On Red Shirts mentioned that with no divisions, there's going to be tiebreakers now. So there's
up to wazoo. That would be.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy.
Yeah. If you don't have a head-to-head tiebreaker, I'm sure it'll be like points for the season,
highest ranking, points
or whatever.
for, all these different things. So we'll see what happens with Penn State, but they've got a lot going for them. It's just they've got to execute on the field. If you go out and you lose to West Virginia, I'm going to be really worried
are off
for
on
the
how
season.
The season's going to go.
Yeah, if you go out and you win those first 5 games. You lose to USC, but you beat Wisconsin. You lose to Ohio State, and you win the rest. You're still a playoff bound team.
Yeah,
and that's what James Franklin needs.
I would say, I have to say that if you are not 5-0 going into that USC game, it's a disappointment.
Yeah, I agree.
If they're not walking into LA at 5-0 and more than likely ranked at least in the top 10, I feel like.
Yeah.
Then that would be a major shock, 1. But 2, it would make all that stretch of 3 games all that more important. If you lose against West Virginia or Illinois or UCLA for that matter, because I don't think you're going to lose to Bowling Green and Kent State. I just going to go out on a limb and say that. I just don't. If you lose to West Virginia, Illinois, or UCLA, the USC, Wisconsin, Ohio State stretch requires you to win all 3 of those games, which is why it's all that more important to go 5-0 leading up to that stretch.
Absolutely agree. So let's see if James Franklin can get it done, because right now him in big games is not good.
Yeah.
Now they've won big games. Not saying that they haven't, but
when
you look at top 10 games, they have not. And
not
again,
lately,
this isn't talking shit. This isn't anything like that. It's just a fact. Penn State versus top 10 opponents in the playoff era, they are 3-17.
But hey,
2 of those came in 2016.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
The only one outside of that was 2022 versus Utah, and Utah lost Cam Rising in that game. And it was tight when they lost him.
Yep. Hey, good news, Nittany Lions fans. Pay attention. You don't have Michigan and Ohio State on your schedule at the same time. So, hey, that whole statistic of you not being able to beat both of them while they're on your schedule no longer applies.
Very true.
So,
and no Oregon, which is huge for this season too.
Which is very important that you only have one of 3 of the monsters that are a part of the Big Ten.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a very winnable schedule. Make the most of it. Trev, anything else on them?
Yeah, I think 11. If they aren't 11-1, I think that would be a disappointment. They need to be 11-1 to even give themselves a shot.
Yeah, I mean, you want to be contending for a Big Ten championship. I'd say I wouldn't even mind a 10-2 season for them necessarily, but you should really be 11-1.
Yeah, being that they're Penn State, they'll probably get the benefit of the doubt with the vote with the ranking system and everything like that. So the 10-2 they might be able to squeeze in. I think 11-1 gets them into the playoff.
Oh yeah,
whether it's at the Big Ten championship or not is regardless. 11-1, you'll be in the playoff.
Yeah, who knows? And that's what we're saying. Just regular season. We don't even know how this would shake out with the Big Ten.
Yeah,
say just regular season. You'd be right in it, no doubt.
Yeah, and we'll later on, closer to season kickoff, we're gonna get into like what teams come out of this and how it all kind of shakes out and everything like that.
Absolutely. We're going to give you all that down the line. For now, we got one more team left. Let's hit Purdue, and then we'll call it a night and get ready to close out.
Purdue? Who wants to talk about Purdue? You want to know who don't want to talk about Purdue? They're bloggers.
They're bloggers, and that's exactly, Trevor, we were talking about this off screen, and I was, taking some notes and trying to read up on one of their pages, and their blogger literally was like, I don't want to do this right now. It's basketball. I don't give. Why am I forced to write about Purdue football right now? That's just brutal.
That is brutal.
I feel for you.
Yeah. Let's start out like what's their over under for their schedule right now, Brendan?
Well, look, 2023 they went 4-8.
Well, that's great.
Their over under this year is 4.5.
All right.
So
it's
right
not looking good considering you got 3 out of the 4 monsters that are a part of the Big Ten. And I did hear an analyst say today that they think that Purdue has the hardest schedule in the Big Ten, which is possible when you think of how good Purdue is.
Yeah, well, let's talk Purdue before we get into the schedule too much, because we're going to give you a little breakdown on what we're seeing. Obviously, 2023 sucked. The 70th ranked offense, 67th ranked defense. But Ryan Walters came in. That was his first year, kind of a bare cupboard after Brom left. So I can understand there being some big drop and not having a lot of production last season. You go out and they kind of tore up the portal, man. I'm not gonna lie. They went and got the 30th overranked portal class. They brought in 18 and lost 29. Yes, you lost your best edge defender and Nick Scruton. You lost Deion Burks on wide receiver. But they went out and they got some guys that they're gonna be right in that rotation or starting. Scylla on the edge, Josh Sales on offensive line, Nyland Green, a cornerback from UGA, is rated as a 4-star. You went out and got help, and that's what you need to do. And seeing that he's willing to go out and attack the portal, I like that from Walters. And seeing it, he obviously knows, hey, look, there's a lot riding on this season. I know I'm playing some of the biggest teams in the Big Ten. I've got to kick some ass in the other parts. Okay. So yeah, I like the portal class. I think they did good. You've got Hudson Card already, who showed that he could go out and sling it last year. There is some hope. I know that they're not feeling it, but I can see why they're hopeful in Purdue. What do you think, Trevor? Anything on their what do you think about this portal class?
Well, the portal class,
it's not the greatest, but it's
there. There's some pieces there that can definitely be. I think there's some pieces there that are definitely going to help them for sure. The edge rushers, 100%. You need as many edge rushers as you can get. Cam Brown coming over from UCLA. That was a good little pickup for the wide receiver.
Yeah.
Nyland Green, I really like him coming from Georgia.
A lot of linemen. They got a lot of
linemen. There's definitely edge rushers. Ojada. Jira Ojada. Don't know where he's from necessarily because it doesn't say, but he's a 3-star.
I think it's Franklin College is what pops up.
I mean, I don't even have an image in 247 Sports. They don't even tell me where he's from. There's just a blank space, an arrow, and Purdue. That's it.
Yeah. Well, he's 6'4", he's good sized edge. And then
6'4", 260. I mean, I would imagine just looking at this transfer portal that looks like about 50% of these kids will probably end up starting at some point in time. Maybe not starting, but rotational pieces and getting significant playing time.
And I agree.
More than likely.
Really, another team where, talk about who's proven, unproven. The wide receiver room, again, is another one. A lot of unproven talent. You hope that there's somebody can hit for Hudson Card. But offensive line, I think is going to be solid. They did go out and got Corey Stewart. Also, he's an all-MAC offensive lineman. So, I mean, 6'6", 303 pounds. You plug him in with, who's coming back from last season, 63% returning production.
Yeah,
not bad at all. Maybe something happens here, Trevor. Do you got anything before you want to talk schedule?
Yeah. The thing is that while their transfer portal is really nice, I actually like the set of 3 that they're bringing in on the recruiting trail, 2 safeties and a corner, all of which are top 200. Well, nope. 2 of them are top 200 players, and they're both 4-stars rated above 90. They're both 93 rated. Coy Beasley, 5'10", 170 is a safety, but then Terrian Grant, which I want to point this out, is I think he might be a standout corner for them. He stands at 6'3", 175 for a cornerback.
Nice.
So what I honestly, in my mind, I'm like, well, put him at safety. That might be a great safety to have back there. A 6'3" guy covering the deep ball.
Could be.
But anyway.
No, you're right.
There's some definite positive pieces. I don't want to talk too much smack on Purdue because I kind of feel bad, but but
I think there would be more.
I like y'all's uniforms a lot.
Hey,
the blackouts are nice. I like them.
I dig them. I want to see them return to the spoiler makers. That's what I want to see. And I don't know if it's going to happen this year, but I do think that Walter's on the right track, especially how he attacks the portal. Now, let's talk schedule because it's a bit. I mean, it's, for lack of a better term, it's a bitch. All right. You got Notre Dame coming in week 3 after you play Indiana State Sycamores week 1. Then you have a bye week, and then you play Notre Dame. You get Oregon State, which was absolutely railroaded in the offseason. And then you play Nebraska, Wisconsin, Illinois, Oregon to round off that first chunk of games.
November, you might as well just quit.
Oh, man. That's like they have a 4.5 over under. They're going to win games that they shouldn't. They're going to lose games that they shouldn't. But like if they go out and lose to Oregon State, they're in trouble. Okay, I fully
lose to
that.
any non-com, and I fully expect Purdue. I'm looking at you right now. You better beat Notre Dame. Teach them why they need to have a conference.
Or teach them why they're going to go to the ACC or something. I have no idea what.
I don't know, man. Whatever.
But you go out and you beat Notre Dame. I mean that you're like, hold up. Everybody's like, hold up. What's going on in Purdue? This is a dangerous team. Watch out. Nebraska, it's in Lafayette, West Lafayette. You've got Wisconsin in Camp Randall at Illinois. I'm burping over here. Sorry. And then you got Oregon in West Lafayette, which is huge having them come to your place. All right. That shows as a Friday night game as well at 8 p.m. What's up with Oregon getting these Friday night games against some teams that
The only thing I can think of right now, Brendan, is because it's allowing them travel time. Like, obviously, it's an earlier game, but it allows them to travel back home.
Yeah.
And get ready for the next week's stuff. Yeah. That's the only thing I can think of. Which I'm okay with a Friday night and a Saturday game. Friday night banger of a game or whatever. But
people piss on them, whatever. But I dig it. Oregon, Purdue, sign me up. Friday night. What else is going on? I mean,
high school football.
Yeah, I mean, I know some people love that, and I feel you for that. But I'm going to be watching Oregon versus Purdue, and playing college football 25 after I get the kids to bed.
Promise. So. I will have one TV with that, one TV going with the game.
Exactly.
Hands
down. So let's round out the rest of the schedule. Northwestern, you got Ohio State at Ohio State. Penn State comes to your house. And then two teams that are kind of, in transition modes, of course, Michigan State and Indiana. 4.5 over under.
Both of them could have the potential to beat you as well. Because Indiana, no matter what anyone says, nobody knows what they're going to be this year.
If you are trying to get a bowl game, your must-win games are obviously Indiana State, Oregon State. You got to beat Nebraska, and you got to beat Michigan State, Indiana, and you've got to beat Illinois, Northwestern too. I mean that you have to win those games. You cannot lose one of them.
Yep. You have to beat out the mids. You have to beat the mids.
Yes.
Be the best mid, Purdue. Just be the best mid.
And look, 2025 schedule, I think, is out somewhat. So I was looking at it. It does get a little bit better next year, but not by much. Honestly, no, it doesn't. So Purdue, I'm sorry. You got to keep attacking that portal and building the depth of this team. But 4.5 wins on your over-under, I could see that being right in that area. Unless you 100%. Go out and you execute on the offensive line, which I think they can. Trev, anything else on these teams?
Not really. I mean, I think 5 wins is doable. Maybe they can squeeze the 6th out, but I think main focus, keep getting better, Purdue, and
I think you're trending in the right direction.
Definitely trending in the right direction.
And I guess we'll just see how it plays out. Go be Spoilermakers, knock off Notre Dame, go get a bowl game. I want to see Purdue in a bowl game this year. It's doable.
Stay tuned for Big Ten predictions coming up later on in the summer.
Absolutely. We got Michigan coming up. I know a lot of folks are waiting to hear that one. Maryland as well, and Michigan State. So guys,
Michigan State and Maryland. Oh, I've got so many people that are waiting for that episode.
Yeah, we're rounding out the Big Ten. It's coming to an end, and then we're going to go on to the Big 12, and then the SEC, and then it's time for predictions and everything else. We'll get to that as we near the season. Guys, thank you again. We appreciate you watching, of course. Please like and subscribe and share. Comment on YouTube. If you don't like what we said, comment on YouTube. Tell us why you don't like it.
Follow us at the @ down below.
All these things are down. They're somewhere on the screen.
That way.
Trevor's pointing. He's showing you where it is. So, and if you're listening on podcast, of course, we appreciate you. And please share it. Tell your friends. It'll help us out.
That's right.
But we appreciate you guys. I hope you have a great one. And we'll hit you up very soon with the rest of the Big Ten previews. How we going?
Peace.